Hello and welcome to the Career Changers. Our guest today is Brenden Kumarasamy, founder of MasterTalk, a YouTube channel he started to help the world master the art of public speaking. In his own words, after coaching many business students on how to give amazing presentation for 2 years, I quickly realized that public speaking is a very difficult subject to master. There are many nuances and generalities that make public afraid to get on stage and present confidently. Because of this, I created this channel to help you master even the slightest details of your pitch so that you can gain the confidence to deliver the best presentation you've ever dreamed of. Today, we are going to discuss with Brenden how to overcome the fear of public speaking. Hi, Brenden. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for the kind intro, Lisa. So great to be on.
So as I just said to you, I really feel under pressure today. Yeah, exactly. So I'm gonna do my best.
You're doing great. You know, I've been on hundreds of podcasts, Lisa, and you're probably the first one to actually read my about section on YouTube. So you're already off to a great start.
Oh, that's good. So you can keep some notes and then give me a score at the end.
You're a 10 out of 10 in my heart. That's all that matters.
Oh, that's great. Oh, well. So I'm really curious to discover everything about you. And today you're running a very successful business and YouTube channel, teaching thousands of people the secrets of public speaking. One may assume that you had an exclusive upbringing that brought you to master public speaking at a very early age. But actually, I went a little bit digging into your different accounts, social media, website, and I found out that when you were 5 years old, your parents looked at you and said, Brenden, you need to go to the French school. You live in Montreal. End of the discussion, except one problem. What was that problem?
Absolutely. You're absolutely spot on, Elisa. Yeah, the problem was I didn't know how to speak French, right? So when I went to school, I would literally be super scared of presentations because most of us are already afraid of communication, but I had to give a presentation in a language I didn't know. So I would go up to my first and second grade classroom and I would just say, bonjour. And that was my life, right? Growing up as a kid. So yeah, absolutely spot on. If I could master communication, anyone can.
So do you have any memory of that specific moment in your life?
Do I have any memory of that specific moment? What I do remember, Elisa, it's a great question, is definitely in regards to the fear I had when I was younger, because when my parents would bring me to the French school, I would always cry and yell all the time because I really wanted to go to English school. I would go, Mom, Dad, in Tamil, it's Amma Appa. I don't want to go to this French school. I don't know how to speak the language. I'm scared. I'm afraid. So I remember a lot of fear, but I also remember a lot of joy because, you know, in Canada, where I grew up, a lot of the kids were really nice to me, right? Because in addition to speaking, right, in a language I didn't know, so they didn't understand what I was saying. Because when I was in kindergarten and first grade, I could only speak English, right? But the other piece as well, and people, not a lot of people know this, but I actually have a crooked left arm because of the way that I was born. So I also had a cast when I was 5 years old. So I was walking around in kindergarten, first grade. I didn't know the language and I had a broken left arm. And the kids were so nice to me. They would try and speak English to me, to try and communicate with me. And that's actually what gave me a little bit of confidence later in life. But I would say that that's probably the memory I remember the most. And the other memory I remember as well is even if I struggled a lot with French as I got older, because my surrounding was so nice to me, I was able to quickly overcome that fear of communication. But definitely in the beginning stages, there was definitely a lot of fear.
So did you have a dream job when you were a child?
I did. It was to be an accountant, funny enough. So when I was, there's actually a funny story on that, at least. When I was 12 years old, my a career counselor was like, you need to figure out what to do with your life. And of course, I was 12. So what do I know about my life? So I was sitting down and I looked at my report card and I noticed I was barely passing or failing almost every subject except for math. So I was really good at mathematics, but every other subject I just bombed. So I went online and I just started looking up careers related to mathematics. And that's how I found being an accountant. And that's actually what I went to school for. So I have a degree in accounting. So I know, funny enough, I know it's weird. How does the public speaking coach major in accounting? But yeah, that's how I started. So that was my dream job. While other people wanted to be astronauts and stand-up comedians, I wanted to be an accountant. I never changed my mind until 5 years ago.
Well, probably that was your career change then. So you then added that from the age of 5 to 16, not only, you mentioned, not only was I scared of communication, like most of us, but I had to give presentation in a language I didn't even know. How did you manage to overcome these challenges?
Yeah, it was really tough, at least, especially I would say from the ages of 5 to 7, especially. I still didn't know French. So I was still like giving little small presentations without really knowing the language. But then as I got older, I still had that fear of communication, specifically in French when I was speaking in front of a classroom, because I always had to translate my words in English into French. So I would say, okay, I know this. And I was like, what's this in French? And I wasn't sure. That always caused me a lot of nerves. What helped me overcome it though, and this is something I teach clients now, is I write my speech in English and then I translate it into French. And then I speak the French presentation to native speakers of the language. So my French friends, they watch me speak in French and they correct my grammar so that when I go into speeches now, I have perfect French. So that's the way that I fixed it. And then, of course, I got really good at communication when I got to university.
Oh, that's a great tip I should follow because, you know, I'm Italian. So
Italiano.
it's challenging for me as well. So it was only later on when you went to university that you started to refine your communication skills through case competitions. What were you actually doing and what was your aim?
Yeah, 100% correct, Elisa. So when I got to university, I started doing these cases. So what they are essentially is, let's say a business like Nike, right, gives you, a presentation, like a problem. Okay, Lisa, we're trying to launch this new shoe, but we don't know if we should launch it in Portugal first or Germany, let's say. So what teams of students do is they come together, they build a business case, and they give the presentation to executives. They present it. And whoever has the best solution and the best presentation wins the competition. But the better question is, why do people do that? Why did we do that as university students? The reason was to get the best jobs out of university. So what a lot of these top companies do, Lisa, is they sponsor these competitions. Their executives, their senior vice presidents, their CEOs show up and they look at the kids to see who presents the best and they take them into their companies. That's why I initially did case competitions, not because I had a passion for presentations. It was because I wanted a job in a big corporate company like IBM or Deloitte or McKinsey. So I started doing these competitions and I accidentally fell in love with them. It was purely by accident. I just started loving these. I was like, wow, these competitions about companies are weirdly interesting. So I started doing the competitions. And then a year later, I started mentoring new students who were entering the competition program. And it was in that moment that I started accidentally getting really good at coaching other people on how to speak. Because these students, we couldn't afford a communication coach. I got really good at communication because I wanted to win those competitions just for that reason, no other reason. And then they said, well, Brenden, how do you speak? And I was like, well, let me figure this out. And I started coaching them on how to do it. And I made a lot of mistakes along the way.
Oh, I would have loved to have that sort of experience at university. So from there, how did you come up with the idea of creating a YouTube channel related to public speaking and also your business MasterTalk?
Absolutely. And it was a complete accident. So basically what happened is after I did those case competitions for 2, 3 years, and I won a lot, I lost a lot more. I learned a lot because I ended up coaching 50 to 75 people on how to speak, really. And the first couple of people, I had no idea what I was doing. I was like, say this less, say this more, completely lost. And then over time, I developed a system. And another piece that I wanted to add here as well is I didn't have a speech coach. I didn't have money for it. My parents were minimum wage workers. I didn't have money for Toastmasters, even if it's very affordable. I was that poor. So I kind of just figured it out on my own. I didn't watch YouTube videos either. So when I landed a corporate job at IBM, my dream job after I graduated from university, before I started working there, a lot of the students I coached over the years asked me this question, which is, how did you learn how to speak? And I didn't really have a good answer to the question. I kind of just did it and figured it out and coached people to figure it out. And they said, well, did you use any resources like YouTube videos or books? And I said, it didn't make sense. Like, why would you watch YouTube videos on this? So because so many people asked me, I started watching what was out there on the market, like watching other people's YouTube channels. And I was horrified by what I saw because a lot of the advice was nonsense, if I'm being honest. You should like be yourself or get up on stage or just, I was like, none of this makes any sense at all. This is what you should be saying. This is because I coached so many of them, right? So I was like, no, this is how you're supposed to do it. And I was so frustrated at the existing solutions that I just started making videos in my mom's basement, like literally over there. I started MasterTalk on that couch 3 years ago with the phone. That's how MasterTalk started. It was never meant to be a business. It was never meant to be anything big. I just made videos in my mom's basement because I was bored and I felt the information was going to be wasted because I didn't want to be a speech coach 4 years ago. I was going to be working at IBM and make, a lot of money there. So I was like, yeah, I don't need to do this. But over time, what happened is I started lacking some fulfillment at work. I loved working at the company, great people, but I felt something was missing that I got from my case competition days. And that's when I realized I should take MasterTalk more seriously. I found a business partner, scaled into a coaching business. And yeah, MasterTalk is a little bit bigger than it used to be, that's for sure.
Oh. Well, a great story, especially a great story of career change for the career changers. So let's talk about the hot topic, that is how to master public speaking. And hopefully I can learn something from you today. So why the majority of people fear public speaking?
Great question. So the answer is actually really simple if you think about it. It took me a long time to find the answer, but I hope this explanation helps, Lisa. So let's think about it. Think about all of the presentations that we've given in our lives. They're usually only given in two settings: school, high school, elementary school, and work, right? So you present at school, and then you go to work, wherever you work, and you present at work, and then our life is over. Let's analyze those presentations. All of those presentations have three things in common. Number one is 100% of them are mandatory. We don't wake up one morning and say, hey, Elisa, do you want to get breakfast and present all day? Says nobody. Nobody does that. Presentations are forced upon us. They're not a suggestion. We have to do them. We don't get to do them. Number two is the topic. We never get to pick the topic. The education system is not, Elisa, what are you passionate about? What do you care about? Do you care about storytelling? Do you care about podcasting? Do you care about Italian culture and pizzerias? Napolitana? Right? What do you care about? Let's have you give a presentation on that. That's not how the education system works. And you know that. It's, yeah, Elisa, I need you to give a presentation on Shakespeare. And you're like, shake what? Like, what are we shaking? Like, I don't understand. Right? So we don't get to pick the topic. We're forced into situations where we have to talk about the Renaissance or 17th century. All these presentations are boring. No offense to history majors, they're boring. So let's repeat. All the presentations are mandatory. All the presentations you never get to pick. And the third one, which is the most important one, Lisa, is every presentation is tied to a punishment, right? So it's never, Okay, everyone, here's what we're going to do. Elisa is going to give a presentation on Italian culture, and we're all going to clap, cheer her on, and give her gelatos and cannolis and celebrate. That's not the education system either. It's, you have to talk about Shakespeare for 5 minutes. And by the way, Elisa, if you make a mistake, you're going to have a failing grade in this class. And then when you get to work and you're working in corporate, when you give a presentation, oh, don't worry, just that promotion you want, you won't have it. And that job here, by the way, you won't have it either if you don't present well. So what else do you expect? So let's recap. All of the presentations are mandatory. All the presentations, you don't get to pick the topic. They're not fun. We're forced to do them. And all of the presentations are related to a punishment. So does it make sense that we're all afraid of communication?
Yeah, it does.
Right? We see public speaking as a chore.
Yeah.
It's a chore. It's like doing the dishes. So how do we change that? Which is probably the better question. I coach kids on this too. I coach my clients as kids, kind of as a give back. And the question I ask them, which is what I'd love to ask everyone here, is how would the world change if you were an exceptional speaker? Right? Think about that question.
Well, I know what I could do with that, step by step. You mentioned 3 points, 3 really important points, but I found something else while browsing through your content, something that really made me think, and it is how to find your public speaking why. In your introduction of this video, you said, he who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow. That's said by me terribly, but I can repeat it that. Who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow. So it's sticking to my mind because actually another career change that went from women Royal Navy to none mentioned it. And this is a quote from Friedrich Nietzsche. I don't know how you pronounce it in English. In Italian, we say Friedrich Nietzsche. So, yeah, great. So how can we find our public speaking why and why it is so important?
Love that question. Very beautifully said. So here's the way I think about this, Lisa. Our public speaking why almost always begins with our why in our lives. Okay, so once we figure out what our purpose is, what we want to achieve in life, it becomes a lot easier for us to include communication. So since we're on this call, it's easy for me to just coach you through it. So let's think about your podcast, right? You're clearly very talented at podcasting. The way that you explained my story arc from end to end, like exactly in the right details, was almost perfect, if not perfect. So you clearly are passionate about doing the podcasting. So that's the goal. It's having more conversations like this. As an example, I'm sure you have many other projects in your life, but this is one of them, and you're very good at it, by the way. But the other piece is, how does communication play into that goal? So for you, it's imagine if you could communicate like Lewis Howes, right? Who's an excellent podcaster. He's one of my favorites. Or like Joe Rogan, or like somebody else that you admire. How would your message get amplified? Well, if you got better at communication, you're already good, but if you got even better, you would impact even more people. So a bunch of Italian women in the world would be like, oh my God, Elisa is like my hero. You could be like Rachel Hollis, right? Or somebody like that, right? Or Iyanla Vanzant, right? Who's one of the top life coaches in the world. But that's the thing is, when you start thinking like that, you go, oh, like this is exciting. If I got better at communication, this is how my life would change. And that's the key. It goes back to the question I asked before. How would the world change if you're an exceptional speaker? The other piece I want to add here, Lisa, is it doesn't necessarily have to be big. It doesn't have to be this big thing. You know, for me, it's a big one. You know, MasterTalk help the whole world, master their communication. For you, it might be a bit bigger too, because of the podcast. But for some people listening to us, maybe they just want to be the best mother that they can be. Maybe they just want to be the best father, or do the best at work, or even take their significant other on a trip and help them communicate with tourists because the other person's really shy to talk to people. Everyone has their own reasons. But the point I want to drive is even the littlest of reasons matter the most, as long as they matter to you. Because communication is so much more than being on a stage and speaking. Communication is the way that we communicate with our loved ones. It's the way that we talk to a stranger at a park. It's the way that we smile at a 5-year-old girl to show her that we care, that we're paying attention, that we're present. So fall in love with the reasons that resonate with you personally. So for me, it's a big impact. It's a grandiose vision. For you, it's probably improving the podcast, but obviously there's other things that I don't know because we don't know each other that well. And then for people listening to this podcast, it's their own. But the key is write those reasons down on a piece of paper, and then look at that list and write a number next to each of those things. And the number is on a scale of 1 to 10. How energetically excited are you by that thing? And everything that's a 9 or a 10, look more into that. And that's probably your public speaking why.
I will do that, definitely. So let's now go through 3 practical tips. The first one, the random word. So can I say a random word and you master the speech?
I'm happy to. Give me any word.
Love.
Sure. You went it easy on me.
Yes.
So many scientists, Elisa, they ask us, what does love really mean? What does it symbolize? And for many of us, love has different meanings. For some, love means a rose on St. Valentine's Day. For others, it's taking that extra 5 minutes to look into their eyes. And for others, it's spending 30 minutes playing toys with them. Love has different meanings in different ways. But the key here is figuring out how you love and how you want to receive love. Because if we focused on how people want to be loved, we can make the world a better place. And this is why love languages are so important, right? Because they allow us to share and receive the ways that we want to be loved. And for me, the biggest thing is acts of service, right? My mom does everything for me. She cooks for me, she cleans for me, she does all of those incredible things for me. And that's why I'm so grateful for having that person in my life. So ask yourself, how can you share and spread love? How can you share this gift with other people so that the world can become a better place? Because all it takes is not a fancy watch, not a $5,000 diamond ring. All it takes is a little bit of listening, a little bit of figuring out how other people want to be loved.
Thank you. I'm so impressed. Actually, now I'm confused. What podcast is this one? Is it about love? Well, so can you explain to our listener actually what did you do there? Because I watched your video, so I understood you explain what the random word exercise is, but they of course don't know. Can you explain that, please?
Yeah, of course, happy to. So the random word exercise is simply this. Pick 5 random words: phone, mouse, screen, light bulb, and create presentations out of thin air. And the reason this is so impactful, Lisa, is it pushes you out of your comfort zone. And what's also great about this is it's fun when you get used to it. The first couple of times is not so fun because the first time, let's say I did love, I was probably like, never gone love before. I hope I don't say anything inappropriate. Oh my God. Love is, right. You're like, it's an emotion. You kind of get confused, right? And this is why I tell clients too is, after you do it 50 times, you start to have fun with it. And that's what we're missing in our communication. The other piece that we're missing is consistency. The hardest thing about communication and practicing it is accountability, Elisa. I need somebody else to practice it. I need this Toastmaster group. I need this. Random word exercise, you don't need a single person. You literally just do it. So I would say the first 100 times, and 100 is a big number, but it's not going to take you that long because it takes you like a minute, right, to do the exercise once. Yeah. Is once you do this a lot of times, and it'll take you a few hours to get it done 100 times, you'll start to go, wow, I'm actually pretty good at this. This is actually not that scary. Give me a harder word. Give me cloud. Give me magic. And then you start to develop a confidence that you never had before. So when you go back into corporate or a boardroom, you're talking about stuff you already know. Like you're asking me questions that you've already prepared for. That's easy. That's easier, It's not easy because you put a lot of work into this, but it's easier than just talking about toilet paper 30 seconds, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I encourage people to do. Don't worry about the technique, because I've done this exercise 3,000 times, like literally 3,000 times, is worry more about, am I doing this 5 minutes a day every day? And the more you do it, the more you get comfortable with it. And then the more you get comfortable with it, the more you start to create your own spin on it.
So in your experience working with clients, do bilingual or trilingual people have to face more challenges when doing this exercise? Because I do feel I have challenges.
Absolutely. So the way that I always see it is, the way that I help clients overcome this, and hopefully that's useful for people who are listening, is we do accountability buddies. So I pair somebody up with somebody else in the group who's also new to the group. So that way, when they practice together, they have fun making mistakes together. Because it's not like one person has done it 2,000 times and the other person has done it twice. They've both done it twice. So they're both having fun making mistakes together, but they're meeting every day for 15 minutes. So after a week, they get really good at the exercise. And then once they get good at the exercise, and that's the key to communication, really anything in life, is forget failure, focus on momentum. Momentum is everything. So let's say in week 1, or if somebody's listening to videos of this podcast might go, I can't do the random word exercise. This is impossible. I can't do that. It's like I got to pick a random word. This is nuts. But after they do this 50 times, they go, it's not bad. And then I just reply with one question. What else is possible with your communication skills? That's it. What else is possible? And they go, I'm not sure. Nothing else is possible. Then I give the next exercise and they go, I can't do this. Then they do it. Then they say, I can't do this. And they do it. And after 3 or 4 times, I just go, what else is possible with your communication skills? And then they get to a place where they go, anything is possible with my communication skills. And that's where the breakthrough happens, right? So for everyone who's listening, if you're scared about doing the random word exercise, let me give you the easiest trick in the book to do this. Do it with your children. Do it with your nieces. Do it with your nephews. It's fun. When you're at a dinner table, I tell people to do this too in my client base. Do it with your 7-year-old daughter. Be like, give them a word, technology, and then watch them do it. And then you'll just go, wow, they're way better than me. And then have them give you a word. And that's a fun way to make it a family activity and also help you practice in a way that's fun.
So let's go back to the practical tips. So the first one was the random word. The second one, silence drills. How do we do this?
Right. So silence drills, I would say, because you've clearly done your homework on me. So that was a really old video. I think I posted maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And the thing about silence drills is silence drills work, but I find there's a lot of friction now that I think back on my own thought leadership when you don't have somebody in person. But I'll explain it, but then I'll give another tip instead. So silence drills are essentially where you sit in front of somebody and you pause them whenever they say a filler word. So let's say you're saying a filler word, I pause you, and then every time I have my finger in front of you, you're not allowed to say anything. So you're like pausing every time somebody does that. But it's harder to do virtually. So instead, what I would do is another strategy that I love, which is love video messages. So all you have to do is make a list of 3 people that you really admire, that have really poured into you, that have really served you this year. Write their 3 names down on a piece of paper. Write one thing that you appreciate about each of them. So let's say for you, Elisa, I really appreciate the level of homework, the level of preparation that you made for this podcast, and then send them a video message about that appreciation. Hey, Elisa, just want to let you know how much I appreciate the way that you did all this homework. And that's it. Most people have never received one video message in their life. Most people. So when they receive it, it really hits them to the core. And the point I want to drive is I don't care what you sound like in the video. You could make a bunch of filler words. You can make all the mistakes in the world. But trust me, just the fact that you do it and you press send will completely change the lives of the people you send it to. So that's the second easy trick I recommend, is send 3 love messages.
I like that. So let's talk about the endless gaze.
Yes, the endless gaze. So yeah, so the endless gaze is an exercise that I do to force people to look at each other for long periods of time. One of the struggles we have in today's era, and this is something we've always been challenged with, Elisa, but I think is more accentuated today, more emphasized today. It's another word for accentuated, is because of this, right? Our phones. We're always paying attention to this instead of the person we're speaking to. So because of that, it's really hard for us to hold eye contact whenever we're giving a presentation. So you have like 20 people looking at you and you're like, oh, well, why are they all looking at me? This is really scary. So how do you fix this? So how you fix this is you practice what I call the endless gaze. So the endless gaze is where you look at somebody in the eyes for 2 to 3 minutes. Okay? Where you're not allowed to say anything. You can blink, by the way. It's not a blinking, it's not a staring contest, right? You could do this, but you have to keep your eyes on them and you can't do anything else and you can't talk. Most people can't last 3 minutes unless I force them to last 3 minutes. And it really, really improves people's ability to stare at others. And it also improves the quality of the relationships around you. Because most people aren't even, they might be sitting next to you, but they're not present with you, right? So what the endless gaze allows you to do is it forces you to be present. It forces you to take ownership of the way that you hold space for other people. And if you're able to do that, when you go back into presentations, it's super easy to do eye contact with a group because you can look at people for 3 minutes. So doing it for 3 seconds makes it really easy.
So I added one more point actually that is one of my favorite, and I think it helped me with my podcast. Your tips helped me with my podcast. How to stop mumbling, because of course, you know, Italians, we always do. So what are the tips for that?
Oh, it's not just Italians, Lisa. Trust me, it's everybody. Definitely not just Italiano. I think it's everybody. But yeah, so filler words, right? I have a whole video on this. It's a bit more detailed, but I'll give the high level so it's easy for people to take action. But if you want the detailed version, you can go see the YouTube video on that. But the trick to removing filler words is to first understand why we say them. The reason we say them in general is to buy time, to save us time. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you ask me a question I don't know the answer, and you've asked me a lot of questions I didn't know the answer to, by the way, which I love because I've never been asked some of these questions. And you ask me the question, what most people do, they go, oh yeah, here's my answer, Lisa. So whenever they're thinking about what they want to say next. Okay. Does that part make sense so far? Good.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between the average speaker and the exceptional speaker? The exceptional speaker is still buying time. They're still trying to save time, but the difference is that they say nothing. They've replaced the filler word with absolutely nothing. So you asked me the question, I have no idea to answer that question. You asked me a question about like, what was the moments that you remembered as a child? I was like, shit, I never been asked that question. So instead of going, I don't know, I go this. It's a great question, Elise. And here would be my perspective. So notice I'm slowing down and I'm pausing. But the real reason I'm doing that is to go, how do I answer this bloody question? I have no idea what to say, but I'm buying time. So the trick with filler words, the easy explanation is we need to remove and replace ums, ahs, uhs with silences. That's the trick. So going back to the silence drill that we talked about earlier, that's the easy way to practice it out, where you do it with a partner. It's when somebody, so let's say we were on a coaching call instead of a podcast, because I don't want to be interrupting you. Obviously, you're asking me questions and I got to answer them. I would literally be pausing like this and you'd be like this, oh, oh. And after 10 times, your filler words are almost all gone.
So this question is not in my script, but actually when you were talking, I was thinking about it.
It's okay.
We should have
But
done
at
the
least
silence.
you're aware. You're aware of it, right? So that's the
Yeah,
key.
because you're in front of me, so I'm like, But I think I didn't say too many ums. So for me, one of the main, when I try to be self-aware or self-conscious of my public speaking, of my speaking, I definitely perceive my anxiety. So you're not a psychologist, but by working with your clients, how do you see like how our feelings are impacting the way we communicate, and how can we get better at public speaking by mastering our emotions?
So notice I'm pausing to buy myself time, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's
That's
good.
the strategy. I'm just pointing it out for people. That's a really fascinating question, Lisa. Here's what I would say. Okay, here's what I would say when we think about anxiety and things like that. I think it's more philosophical than anything else. So let me give you an analogy I use. Let's imagine a boxing ring. You know, like boxing, right? Don't worry, I won't fight you today. There's no fighting because you probably beat me. To be honest, let's take a boxing ring. Right? So one side of the ring is your fear or our fear of communication, our fear of speaking up, our fear of raising our hand in a meeting, having a conversation, right? And the other side of the ring is our message. Why is it important for us to share this? Why are we raising our hand? Why are we pressing record on our cameras? Why are we starting the podcast? So the goal here, and I really want to make sure this is clear, is not to remove the fear. It will never go away. If you think you can remove your fear of communication, you are wrong. It is impossible to remove. I'll give you the best example. If somebody called me right now, Elisa, and said, hey, Brenda, I need you to coach Elon Musk tomorrow, I would probably pee my pants. Okay, like I guess I'm supposed to be the communication expert. Brendan's gonna pee his pants if somebody calls him and said, I need you to go to California tomorrow and coach Elon Musk. Okay, right? So I'm not gonna say, oh yeah, I have zero fear whatsoever. If I screw that up, people are going to know. So this is a very high pressure situation. It is impossible to remove all your fear. There's always something that will scare us. The goal is not to remove the fear. The goal is to make sure that the fear loses to the message in a boxing match. So when your fear and your message meet in the middle of the ring, the fear is still going to be in that boxing match, but you need to make sure that your message is more important than the fear. Why did you start your podcast? You didn't start the podcast because you're an exceptional communicator. You started the podcast because the message that you wanted to share, the conversation that you wanted to share, were more important than the fear that came with the message. Same thing with me. Why did I start MasterTalk when I was 22 years old? 22, Elisa. I started coaching CEOs, okay, who are like in their 40s and 50s and sometimes 60s when I was 22. Who was I to share that with the world? Who am I? I'm still living in my mom's basement. I'm still here. Like, even if I coach some very successful CEOs, you know, I have a very successful practice that's still growing. I'm still learning. Isn't that insane? I'm only 25 today. So how in the world did I have the confidence to press record the first time? And I'll tell you, did I have a lot of fear? Did I have a lot of insecurity? Absolutely. There's so many people on YouTube who have PhDs in communication, right? They got master's degree. I didn't have any. I had a bachelor's in accounting. Right? Completely the opposite. So why did I press record? That's the question, right? I pressed record for the 7-year-old girl who couldn't afford me. Because if you're 15 years old, if you're 13 years old and you're a girl, let's say as an example, it doesn't matter where you live. You could live in Italy, right? You can live in Burano or Siena. It doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
If you're going on YouTube and you're looking up public speaking videos, what do you find? You find a bunch of old white dudes who talk about communication. There's nobody in their 20s sharing communication information except for maybe me and like a few other people. So if I don't press record, who else will? So when I got to that conclusion, I said, no, I need to take MasterTalk very seriously. So my message was more important than the fear. That's the solution. I don't think it's about managing emotions. I think it's about managing the fear with why we want to share the message and making sure that the message is more important than the fear every single time.
So the Career Changers is an online community that aims to inspire people during their journey to self-realization. And through the Career Changers Awards, we also aim to reward people that have chosen the less traveled road in life, and they made changes in their life. And as a consequence of that, and made the world a better place. You said, I believe the next Elon Musk is a 7-year-old girl in some part of the world. Thus, it is my responsibility to be successful so that everyone like her can grow up being exceptional communicators through my free content. What is your mission and how do you feel your work is making the world a better place?
Yeah, I mean, beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that, Elisa. You said my mission better than I have, so I won't repeat it. I think what I'll say instead is why it matters. You know, I think what the crazy part about communication, if there's anything I've learned in this industry, is that it's the most important skill in the world, but nobody is sharing it for free in a way that's really accessible. Like, forget the paywalls. Yeah, sure, I got a business. Sure, that all that stuff is great. But like really like genuine content every single week, where like if you watch all the videos, you'll have all the strategies that you need to be successful. It is the most important thing in the world. It is what unlocks human potential. Because if everyone is an exceptional communicator, all of the best ideas would get shared. And if all of the best ideas get shared and we all have the confidence to share them, imagine how quickly humanity would move forward. Imagine how many less wars there would be, more innovation there would be, great outcomes there would be. And that's really my life's mission, is how do I create enough thought leadership so that when I die, much like Dale Carnegie, people can still learn from me forever and keep learning the skill and not having to start at zero like I did, right? Because I didn't have a coach. I didn't have these resources. I already made all of the mistakes. So now that I've made all the mistakes, I can share all of, and there's probably a lot more mistakes for me to make, by the way. But the other piece is, as I learn it, since I can openly share all that, people don't have to make the same mistakes as me. So that when that, the 7-year-old girl who's probably the next Elon Musk, nobody knows who she is. I don't know who she is. You don't know who she is. But the point is that 7-year-old girl will know, because they're the next Elon Musk, that they need to work on their communication skills. But nobody believes in them. They don't have the money for a communication coach. But I know that person, when I get to that level someday, and slowly but surely we're getting there, that they'll look me up one day on YouTube. I won't know who they are, and they'll watch all my YouTube videos and they'll figure out how to master communication with those videos. And that is my hope for the world.
Well, that's beautiful. And I think that there may be many adults that they have their own 7-year-old inside. They're actually looking for the same type of inspiration. So you found your mission and you're living a fulfilled life and career.
Trying to.
Sorry?
I said trying to.
What type of advice would you give to anyone along their path to self-realization?
I would say a book recommendation, some life advice. So book recommendation, my favorite book of all time, that you actually probably know since you've done so much homework on me, is a book called Thirst by Scott Harrison. So Scott Harrison is the CEO of Charity Water, and he's my greatest inspiration. And his book has not only changed my life, but changed the lives of so many people that I've gifted it to. And there's a quote in the book that I'll never forget for the rest of my life. And the quote is, "The goal is not to live forever, but rather create something that will." And that always stuck with me, because he went from a nightclub promoter in New York City in his early 20s, getting drunk almost every night, taking all the drugs in the world, having a girlfriend on Vogue magazine, having a Rolex watch, all those things. And he was the worst human being he knew. And then he started a nonprofit, and now that nonprofit has grown to raise $500 million, probably more as of this recording, helped tens of more than 10 million people gain access to clean water. And I think his story is a great example of focus, but also how we can all make the world a better place, not just the people who have big, grandiose ideas. So my life advice is be insane or be the same. If you want to be like everyone else, that's totally fine. But if you want to do something meaningful with your life, you want to do something special, you need to understand that the people who do special things are a little bit special in their head too. They're a little bit crazy. Like, don't you find it odd that I started a YouTube channel on communication? Like, isn't it the whole bizarre? Like, since you studied the whole, isn't it weird? Like, I should have started a YouTube channel on pranks or like music, or I should have been like a rapper, like most people want to do, or like an actual YouTuber. But I made him on executive communication tips. And then after I started coaching CEOs when I was 22, yet I still live in my mom's basement. I love Justin Bieber. I don't really own a car or drive one. I'm a little bit scared to drive cars, to be honest. And I dance alone in my basement an hour a day. And on top of that, I can karaoke in 8 different languages. How does any of this make sense? And that's the point. When every decision in your life makes sense to the only person that it should, which is you, you're probably making the right decisions.
So before you can give the final score to my public speaking, oh my God, I'm so worried. I have, well, first of all, if anyone want to get in touch with you, where they can find you and how?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, Elisa. Wonderful conversation. Yeah, I would say there's 2 ways to get in touch with me. The first one is the YouTube channel. So if you go on YouTube and you type MasterTalk in one word, you'll find my YouTube videos. There's hundreds of them available for free that you can check out. And if you're interested in coaching or seeing me live on Zoom and learning from me there, I highly encourage you to register for one of our free trainings over Zoom. It's interactive. I coach people for free. And the website for that is rockstarcommunicator.com.
I think I may subscribe.
Yeah, join.
So really now the last question, if you could give yourself a piece of advice, what would you say to your younger self, even if you are very young, maybe that 5-year-old boy that was sent to the French school?
5-year-old boy, I would say keep having fun, but I would say maybe the 15-year-old, it definitely goes back to be insane or be the same. I would say there's a lot of things I would say, but I would say besides that, since we've already talked about that, is the idea of don't put the people you admire on a pedestal. So the people that you really admire, whether it's like Barack Obama, whether it's Michelle Obama, whether it's like somebody you really care about.
Or Brenden Kumarasamy.
Yeah, I guess so. It's funny. It's funny you included me on the list with those people. That's funny, but I appreciate that. You're really good at making guests feel special. I just got compared to Barack Obama. That's great. That's gonna make that week. But I think the key is don't think of them as people you admire. Think of them as people that you would respect, but more importantly, think of them as colleagues. Think of them as equals. Right? You know, when I was younger and I started listening to a guy named Lewis Howes, he has a podcast called The School of Greatness. I started listening to it when I was 20. And I was always Lewis's biggest fan. And the mindset shift that really helped me grow is I shouldn't consider Lewis a hero. I should consider him a colleague and a friend. Because when you start to see people that you admire as friends and colleagues, you start to see their weaknesses, their flaws, how they can be better. And you start to realize that they're just human beings too. And once you realize that the people you admire are human beings too, then you ask yourself a much better question, or you come to a much better realization, which is, I could be like them too. But if you just admire them, like the people who admire famous artists and musicians, you'll never become them. So if you want to become them, you need to stop admiring them and you need to start learning from them. How do I make them my friend? What's wrong with them? What's wrong with their approach? And when you start that journey, your whole life is going to take off.
Well, thank you, Brenden, so much for joining us today and sharing your inspirational career story and wisdom. And well, let's keep the score then.
For me, you get a score of 10 out of 10, Elisa. And the reason you get a 10 out of 10 is I've been on over 500 podcasts probably, and you have asked the most meaningful question. I think you're easily in the top 3. Easily. I'm shocked at the level of detail that you know about me, the way that you strategically weave the questions end to end in this conversation. So you're definitely very high up there. So I'll give you a 10 for today.
Oh, thank you. I'm gonna sleep happy tonight. That's great. Well, maybe we will catch up. I don't know how long it's gonna take to master my public speaking, and then let's see how better I am. So, well, a last message for our listeners. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tune in next week for a new inspirational episode of The Career Changers. Thank you, Brenden, again.
Thank you.